I never imagined my sister's funeral would feel like a performance. It was supposed to be a quiet goodbye, a moment of peace. Instead, it felt like a stage, and everyone was playing a part. My sister Eleanor passed just 4 days ago. Cancer took her quickly. There was no time to prepare, no time to say everything we needed to say. And she was texting me about the spring flowers blooming in her garden. And the next, I was getting a call from the hospital. She was gone. She and I were close in age, only 13 months apart. But over the years, life took us in different directions. She married into comfort, into a family with money and a home that always smelled like lemon polish. I became a school teacher. I lived in a small rented flat most of my life. I never envied her, but I did notice how different our worlds had become. She had one daughter, Rachel. Rachel was the kind of woman who walked into a room like she owned it, always perfectly dressed, always calculating. Even as a child, she knew how to get what she wanted. And now, she was front and center at her mother's funeral, looking like she was running a business event. Black silk dress, hair pinned back, not a tear in sight. I sat alone in the second pew. No husband to hold my hand, no children of my own, just me, holding the folded service program and trying not to shake. The priest, Father Lawrence, began the reading. To everything there is a season. But I wasn't listening. I was watching Rachel. Her eyes weren't on the cross, they weren't on the priest. They were scanning the room. Her gaze stopped at certain faces. The lawyer, her mother's old friend, a few cousins. She wasn't grieving, she was making mental notes. That's when I felt the first chill in my spine. Grief has a rhythm, a quiet, a weight. You can feel when someone carries it. Rachel was light as air. After the service, most people moved slowly. They lingered, hugged, whispered. I sat quietly in the pew, letting the moment settle. I didn't want to rush. I wasn't ready. But Rachel was already gone from the sanctuary. I saw her slip out the side door with our niece Maria. I stood, steadying myself on the wooden bench. I followed. That's when I saw it. Rachel had opened Eleanor's jewelry box. It was the cream-coloured one, with the gold clasp, the one that sat in the back of her bedroom wardrobe, the one I remembered from when we were girls, playing dress-up in her room. Eleanor never let anyone touch that box, but Rachel had it wide open, right there in the church hallway. She held up a sapphire brooch. This one was always Aunt Sylvia's favourite, she said to Maria. Then, lifting out the gold bangles, she added, "You wore these at my wedding, remember? You should take them." My stomach turned. Eleanor hadn't even been buried yet. I stepped forward. "Rachel," I said softly. "Shouldn't this wait?" She barely looked up. Mum would have wanted it this way. No drama, just making sure everything goes where it should. Drama, that's what she called it. I looked down at the spread of rings, pins, and necklaces. Each one held memories. Birthdays, anniversaries, trips we took. Eleanor once wore that pearl locket when she visited me after my surgery. Another piece had been passed down from our grandmother. But now, it all looked like items in a shop window. Before I could speak again, I heard someone clear their throat behind me. It was Father Lawrence. "Miss Helen," he said, addressing me gently. "Yes." He stepped forward, holding a plain white envelope. His hand trembled slightly as he handed it to me. "It's from Eleanor," he said. "She asked me to give this to you, only after the service." I looked down at the envelope. My name was written on it, in Eleanor's handwriting. Neat, soft, familiar. Rachel leaned in. "What is it?" I didn't answer. I turned away, walked back into the sanctuary, and sat down again in the pew. The light from the stained glass fell across my lap. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single piece of paper. "Cullen, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. I didn't have the courage to say these things aloud, but I trust you. The jewelry, the letters, the house, none of it belongs to Rachel. I've made arrangements. Trust Father Lawrence. Love, Ellie." My fingers went cold. Rachel had no idea, but my sister had planned something. She saw what was coming, and she left the truth in my hands. I sat still for a long time, the letter resting in my lap like a weight I wasn't ready to carry. The words echoed in my head. None of it belongs to Rachel. Eleanor had seen what I'd seen, and more, and she had acted, quietly, carefully, as only she would. I folded the letter and slipped it back into the envelope. I didn't rush. I wanted the moment to settle. Then I stood up and walked toward the hallway, where Rachel was still sorting jewelry as if we were backstage at a theatre show. Her hands moved quickly, assigning pieces to people who hadn't even asked. Some of them looked uncomfortable. Maria stood by, silent, unsure whether to speak. I stepped beside Rachel and spoke just above a whisper. Eleanor left something else. For me, with the priest. Rachel looked up. Her smile was tight. What is it? Some note? Mom was losing focus at the end, you know. She wasn't thinking clearly. She was clear enough, I replied. She asked Father Lawrence to give it to me after the service. Not before. Rachel's eyes narrowed. Her voice dropped low. What did she say? I think you'll find out soon, I said. She asked me to trust him. Before she could speak again, Father Lawrence returned from the other room. He looked serious now, more so than during the service. In his hands, he held a second envelope, this one larger, heavier. He walked straight toward me and offered it gently, as if it might break. Eleanor gave me this 3 months ago, he said. She said it contained her final instruction. She wanted it kept safe. I nodded and took the envelope. Rachel stepped forward. If this is about the estate, I should be involved. I didn't respond. I stepped aside into the empty office off the hallway. It was quiet in there. No stained glass, no music, just the ticking of a small clock on the shelf. I sat down and opened the envelope carefully. Inside were 2 things, a formal letter from Eleanor's attorney, and a small bundle of handwritten notes, each folded with care. The legal letter came first. It was clear Eleanor had updated her will 3 months before she died. Everything, her house, her jewellery, her letters, and even the small savings she had left, had been placed in a trust, not under Rachel's name, under mine. I was to serve as executor. The instructions were precise. Rachel was not to receive anything immediately. Everything was to be reviewed, organised, and distributed with thought. She had even listed which items were to be given to which people, including things Rachel had already started handing out that day. It was all in black and white. Then I opened the handwritten notes. There were 5. 1 for me, 1 for Rachel. The rest were marked for people I didn't recognise, friends, neighbours, and someone named Miss Jameson. I read mine first. It was tender, honest. She apologised for keeping me at a distance over the years. She said she had always trusted me, but didn't want to burden me. She admitted she had been afraid to confront Rachel's behaviour, afraid of making things worse. She learned to lie with kindness, Eleanor wrote, and I kept believing it, until I couldn't anymore. She explained that in her final months, she had seen Rachel's true intentions, the bank withdrawals, the pressure to sign papers she didn't understand, the way Rachel had spoken to nurses when she thought no one was listening. I didn't want my daughter to become someone I feared, the letter said, but in the end, I feared her more than I trusted her. That line stayed with me. I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. When I stepped out of the office, Rachel was still there, now on her phone, her voice sharp and low. She turned quickly when she saw me. Well? She asked. There's a new will, I said calmly. Dated 3 months ago. You're not the executor. I am. Her face froze. What? She said, voice rising. Mum didn't tell me that. That can't be right. She was sick. She was clear, I said. She left it with Father Lawrence. She wrote it in her own hand. It's signed, notarized, and witnessed. Rachel took a step back. Her hand clutched her bag tightly. This isn't fair. I've been handling everything. I've taken care of her for years. She knew, I said softly. She knew everything. The hallway fell quiet. Maria looked away. A few guests paused nearby, sensing the tension. Rachel opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. Then, without another word, she reached over and slowly closed the lid of the jewellery box, the same one she had opened so boldly an hour ago. She sat back down in one of the hallway chairs. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just sat down. And in that silence, I finally felt my sister's presence. Not in the ceremony, not in the flowers, but in the way justice had arrived. Quiet, strong, and right on time. Later that evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold, and the unopened letters spread before me. The house was silent, except for the ticking of the wall clock and the hum of the refrigerator. I hadn't turned on the lights yet. The sun was low, casting soft gold through the curtains. I wasn't in a rush. I wanted to do this slowly, the way Eleanor would have done it. There were still 3 letters left. 1 for Rachel, 1 marked Miss Jameson, and 1 with only initials I didn't recognize. I left those aside for now. I couldn't stop thinking about what Eleanor might have written to her daughter. I didn't want to open it. It wasn't mine, but part of me needed to know. Not for curiosity, for protection. If I was now responsible for Eleanor's wishes, I had to understand what she had said to the very person she had feared near the end. The envelope was thin, a single sheet inside. It began simply, "Rachel, I wish I had more time to make things right between us. I know you think I chose others over you, but I didn't. I was just too tired to keep explaining why your actions hurt. You've always been clever. You knew how to smile while taking more than was offered. You believed it was yours because you needed it, but needing something doesn't make it yours. I saw what you were doing. I didn't want to believe it, but I heard how you spoke when you thought I was asleep. I saw the bank statements, the missing things. I still love you. I always will. But love doesn't mean trust. That's why I've asked Helen to handle everything. Not to punish you, but to protect you from yourself, and to protect the memory of what we once had." There was no anger in her words, no revenge, just truth. I stared at the letter for a long time. I imagined Rachel reading it. I wondered if she would even finish it, or toss it aside the moment she saw the first line. People like Rachel don't read to understand. They read to defend. I placed the letter back in its envelope and tucked it beneath the others. The next morning, I drove to the address written on the third envelope. Miss Jameson. I remembered the name from long ago. She had been Eleanor's piano teacher when we were teenagers. I hadn't seen her in decades. I half expected the house to be empty, or the number to be wrong. But when I rang the bell, a soft voice answered, and an older woman appeared at the door with a walking cane and a cardigan too big for her shoulders. She remembered me right away. "Helen," she said with surprise, "you still have your mother's eyes." I explained why I had come, and her hands trembled slightly as she took the envelope from me. She didn't open it right away. Instead, she asked if I would sit with her for a few minutes. I did. Her home was filled with music books and framed photos of students from years past. She served me tea without asking, and we sat in silence until she finally said, "Your sister had such soft hands, even when she played the loudest notes." When I left, she hugged me. Her arms were thin but warm. "I'm glad she had you," she said, in the end. That night, I went through the trust documents again. Eleanor had been methodical. She had not only listed what belonged to whom, but also why. The sapphire brooch, to Sylvia, because she had once held Eleanor's hand during a miscarriage. The gold bangles, to Maria, not because she wore them once, but because she had sat beside Eleanor during chemotherapy, week after week, when Rachel didn't visit. It wasn't just about objects. It was about memory. It was about care. That's what Rachel didn't understand. She thought inheritance was a prize, a reward for being present at the right time, but Eleanor had redefined it. She gave based on love, not blood, on kindness, not names. And in doing so, she restored something I didn't realize we'd lost: dignity. By the end of that week, I had delivered each letter, followed each request, and started the quiet process of preparing the estate. I never raised my voice. I never shamed Rachel publicly. I didn't need to. The silence of truth did more than any fight ever could. It didn't take long before Rachel fought back. 4 days after the funeral, I received a letter in the mail. It wasn't handwritten. It wasn't worn. It came from a law office in the city, a place I didn't recognize, but the letterhead told me enough. She had hired a lawyer. The letter questioned the legality of the revised will. It used phrases like mental capacity and undue influence. It claimed Eleanor had been under duress and not of sound mind when she changed her estate plans. I sat at my kitchen table, rereading those words. The kettle whistled behind me, but I didn't move. I had known this was coming, but seeing it in black and white still made my chest tighten. She was trying to erase her mother's last decision. I didn't panic. I didn't call anyone. Instead, I walked to the cabinet and pulled out a folder I hadn't touched since the day I opened Eleanor's final envelope. Inside, tucked behind the legal forms, was something I hadn't fully examined yet. A small flash drive. Eleanor had labeled it in her handwriting. Hospital room, October 12th. Voice notes. I took a deep breath, slid it into my laptop, and pressed play. Her voice filled the room. Tired, soft, but clear. She was speaking into a recorder. "I don't know how much time I have," she said, "so I'm saying this out loud now, in case I can't later. Rachel has been pushing me to sign over everything. The house, the accounts, even my jewelry. I told her I needed time, but she came back 2 days later with new papers." She coughed, then continued. "She gets angry when I hesitate. She says it's all hers anyway. She says I'm being selfish. I don't think she sees me anymore. I think she sees property. There was a pause. I'm scared to say no. Another pause. I asked Helen to come visit next week. I haven't told her any of this, not yet. But if I don't get to, and you're listening to this, please believe me. I know what I'm doing. I know who I trust. My mind is still mine. My choice is still mine. I sat still as the recording ended. The room was quiet again. Tears ran down my cheeks, not because I was sad, but because I had never heard her speak like that. So honest, so clear, so brave. I called her lawyer the next morning and forwarded the file. He listened in silence. Then he said softly, This changes everything. Rachel didn't give up right away. She called me once, only once. Her voice was flat, rehearsed. You know Mum didn't mean to shut me out, she said. She was confused. You encouraged her to question me, but that's not fair. I said nothing. You're turning people against me, she added. She was my mother. She still is, I said. Even now, there was a pause. Then the line went dead. A week later, I received no follow-up from her lawyer. No more letters, no threats, nothing. Instead, something else arrived. It was a small box, sent by courier, no return address. Inside was Eleanor's final journal. She had written every day in the hospital. Little thoughts, quiet observations, notes about the weather, sometimes a memory from childhood, sometimes a simple line like, Today the nurse was kind. But on the very last page, dated 2 days before she passed, she wrote this, I am no longer afraid. I know Helen will do the right thing. Rachel will either learn or she won't. But my story and my things are safe now. I closed the book and placed it beside her photograph on the mantel. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't feel anger or pride or even relief. I felt peace. Eleanor hadn't left this world in fear. She had taken the time to protect her memory, to tell the truth, to leave behind not just things, but a record of her love and her strength. And she had trusted me to carry it. Not because I was perfect, but because I had been watching when no one else did. Weeks passed. The calls stopped. The letters stopped. Rachel, in her usual way, slipped out of sight. No apology, no acknowledgement, just silence. Some said she moved to the city, started over somewhere new. Others said she was still around, just quieter now. I didn't ask. I didn't chase the answer. When people show you who they are, you don't need to look twice. Eleanor's home sat quiet for a time, just as she left it. Books on the table, framed photos on the hallway wall, the garden still half alive. I visited every few days, watering the plants, keeping the windows open, making sure it felt like someone still remembered. And they did. Not long after, Maria came by. She brought a small cake and 2 cups for tea. We sat on Eleanor's back porch, where the breeze always seemed to carry the scent of rosemary and dust. She gave me the bangles, Maria said, running her fingers over them. But not because I wore them. It was because I sat beside her when no one else did. I didn't know that mattered so much to her. It mattered, I said quietly. She noticed everything. Maria nodded and blinked fast. She didn't cry, but she understood. Later that month, I delivered the remaining letters, the one addressed with just initials. It turned out to be a neighbour, a woman who used to bring soup when Eleanor's hands hurt too much to cook. Her note was short, but her reaction wasn't. She hugged me for a full minute, shaking. I didn't think she remembered me, she whispered. She never said much, but I see now that she felt more than she ever let on. That was Eleanor. She never announced her feelings. She recorded them, in journals and gifts and little acts most people overlooked. But they were there, quiet and clear, for those who paid attention. The last thing I did was return the jewelry box to her home, not to lock it away, but to display it, gently, with a note inside. I wrote, These belong to a woman who lived with grace. They go only to those who carry the same. I placed it on her bedroom dresser, beside a small vase of lavender. A few weeks later, Father Lawrence called. He was retiring. Before he left, he invited me back to the church for a quiet talk. He told me Eleanor had left a small donation in her will. Not large, but enough to fix the broken stained glass window at the front of the chapel. The same one we had both stared at as children. During long Sunday mornings we didn't yet understand. She said it was a way to let the light in, he told me. And when the repairs were done, they placed a small brass plaque beneath the window, in memory of Eleanor, who watched in silence, but left her truth behind. Now, every time I visit, I sit in the second pew, Same seat, same stillness. I don't come to pray. I come to remember. Not just Eleanor, but the lesson she left me. That some justice doesn't need noise. It doesn't need anger. It only needs clarity and time. Rachel may never come back. She may never change. But that no longer belongs to me. What does belong to me is the quiet strength my sister gave me when she chose me. Not to punish her daughter, but to protect her story. A story of mistakes, of love, of watching too long in silence, but ending, finally, with a voice that spoke from beyond the grave. A voice that said, I saw, I knew, and I chose differently. In the end, she gave me something more valuable than the jewelry, or the house, or the trust. She gave me her trust, and that I will carry for the rest of my days.